One of the absolutely most important factors of a unique voice is determined by the resonance. Now, how can you manipulate it and use it in your favor to create unique character voices? Well, stick around and I'll show you. Hello! Welcome back to Character Voice Building with me, Fernando Macias Jimenez. I am here to help you build and develop well-rounded character voices. We are still in the instrumentalization category of the RCSB, Rounded Character Speech Blueprint. If you haven't checked that out, the overview, check it out somewhere over there. And the instrumentalization category is all about using your body as an instrument, as a musical instrument. Now, within this category, we are in the fourth element, and that is resonance. Resonance, in oversimplified terms, is the intensity and the quality of the voice. Now, this is all about overtones and the harmonic series and basically just physics and acoustics. And there's an entire field dedicated to that, so I won't really get into it very specifically here. It is a fascinating field, but for our purposes, we'll just go and skip ahead a little bit. The general idea is this. The more space you have, the more resonance. And that means the voice will take a darker, rounder, fuller quality. Same goes for the inverse. If you have a restricted space, you'll have a brighter, thinner sound. There are many things in our bodies that affect that resonance, either by natural resonant chambers that we have, or by moving things around and modifying things in our bodies to create those spaces or take away from those spaces. Also redirecting airflow, as we'll see, which is very important. We're going to go through 6 elements that affect that resonance. Vocal tract length, larynx height, the pharynx, tongue positioning, oral cavity, and nasal passageway. So let's start with the vocal tract length. The vocal tract basically begins from your sound source, which are your vocal folds, and goes all the way out to your mouth and your nose. The longer the vocal tract is, the lower the resonant frequency will be, and therefore the voice will be darker, fuller, rounder. Now, this is mostly biological, just with what you're born with, but there are many ways to alter it, and one of them is larynx height. So your larynx is basically right behind your Adam's apple. The vocal folds are contained within that larynx, and the larynx itself, along with the vocal folds, can go up or down. In essence, altering the vocal tract length by making it longer or shorter. Now, keep in mind that this doesn't necessarily affect pitch, because pitch is determined by the vocal folds, and it doesn't matter if it's up or down. So when talking about vocal folds, you can think about it like this. Here's a balloon. If I blow it up and just let it loose, it sounds like this. But if I tighten the balloon, it sounds like this. The tighter the vocal cords, the higher the pitch. Now, going back to resonance itself. So, here is an example of what I mean. This roll of paper towels, the tube particularly, will be my vocal tract. The balloon will act as the vocal folds. Using a long tube simulates the larynx being much lower, basically make the vocal tract longer. And using a short tube simulates having the larynx higher, therefore making the vocal tract shorter. So here we go. So as you can hear, the resonance of the longer tube sounds much darker and much fuller, while the short one is much thinner and brighter. Now on to the pharynx. The pharynx is a muscular tube that connects the nasal passageway and the oral cavity to the larynx and the esophagus. Now, I have to confess I don't know as much about this as I would like, but from what I've gathered from the research that I've done, it's mostly a matter of redirecting airflow between the nasal passageway and or the oral cavity. This is mainly done using your tongue and using those muscles around. So a good way to hear that and feel that is say the word song, but very slowly. Go back and forth between the O and the NG. So song. Feel that? That is you redirecting that airflow from the nose to the mouth, nose, mouth. Which brings us to tongue positioning. The tongue is extremely elastic and super responsive. You can do so many different shapes and so many different things with your tongue. Some of those things might be either constricting a space that's in your mouth or different chambers. Could be expanding that. But it also is very good at redirecting airflow, again, to nasal passageway or oral cavity. So for example, try to go through the vowels, but without moving your lips or your jaw to get that to happen. That leaves the tongue to do most of the work of changing that sound. It's a little difficult to do, but you can tell the tongue is doing all sorts of crazy things to get that sound to happen. Of course, you need other elements in your face, in your body, to produce the actual vowels you need for speech and stuff like that. But this is a very good example of how just your tongue can affect the resonance so much. Now, for the second to last one, we have oral cavity, which is basically your mouth. This cavity can be altered, of course, through many different factors, but here, the tongue is king. The jaw, however, also affects that very deeply, and your cheeks affect that as well. So to demonstrate this, take a random tone and just sing that tone, but start with your jaw almost completely closed and duck-lipped like that. Okay, so okay, then jaw open but still duck-lipped. Then jaw open, but lips a little bit more relaxed. Now, just for fun, open your cheeks more and see what happens. Crazy, right? By changing the space inside your mouth, there is a lot that can change within that resonance. And finally, we have nasal passageway. This comes into play a lot, specifically when redirecting airflow into it, as we talked about before. As far as I know, other than redirecting the airflow to that cavity, there's little you can do to really change that tone. Perhaps in how you redirect that airflow into that cavity, or the percentage of how much you go, nasal cavity versus oral cavity. But there's not like a big muscle inside the nasal passageway or nasal cavity that really you can control to alter the sound. This is also a big part of why when you have a cold, you sound so different, because that cavity is now constricted by mucus or by inflammation, and therefore it really changes and alters that sound. Now, for an example of how it sounds, redirecting sound to the nasal passageway, or trying not to use it at all, here's a good exercise to do. I'm going to sing a pitch, and using my tongue, I'm going to constrict the air to go up or down, nasal or oral. And you'll be able to tell when I'm doing it, because when I'm going to be pressing my nose, that's when you know. When it alters, that's when it's the nasal part. When it doesn't alter, that's purely the oral cavity. Crazy. Now, this is all fascinating stuff, but do I really keep everything in mind when I'm creating a character or performing a character? No, absolutely not. Most of this is pretty intuitive and organic, but really putting a name to something and understanding the mechanics of the whole thing really helps get better control of your instrument. A lot of people, when they're talking about the resonance, particularly in accents, as you'll see in many videos, they'll talk about about that as, the resonance is all down by the chin, or everything is way in the back of the throat, or it lives right smack in the middle of the oral cavity, or everything's through the nose, that kind of thing. It's not really that it originates from that, but it is the fact that with everything our body does to really redirect that airflow and change things around, it feels like it's coming from there. And that is an absolutely wonderful thing to have, because it is muscle memory, and also having that vibration feel like it's coming from a particular place in your face or your chest or something like that. It becomes a great blueprint to follow. It's a great marker. So instead of thinking about all these 6 elements, you just think like, oh, okay, the resonance, it should feel like it's coming all the way over here. And if you do things properly, you will remember that feeling and you know you're doing it correctly. Now, the video at this point has gotten a little long, so I'll avoid the actual example sections like I normally do. But if you really want to check out some examples, you can go back to the mechanics video. And most of the examples there deal with resonance heavily, and it's actually discussed in there. But particularly the last example with the SpongeBob crew, I think it's really, really clear that change in resonance between each of the characters. So there you have it. That was resonance. So keep in mind that a huge part of what makes a voice unique is that own particular resonance. So if you keep all the aspects we talked about today, you can come up with a crazy amount of different voices just through changing the resonance. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope this helps you develop your character voices further. Please like and subscribe and check out What the World Podcast. It is an improvised comedy show done completely in character, and it's mainly there just as my personal practice, but anybody can listen to it. Perhaps they'll help in understanding how to apply these concepts to specific characters, and hopefully do them on your own. Thanks again, have a great time, be kind, and I'll see you soon.